Could it be time for Ed and Lorraine Warren to actually retire? Before you head into the Conjuring Last Rites, here's everything you need to know about the couple, their cases, and all of those toys they keep locked away. The movie versions of Ed and Lorraine are similar to their real-life counterparts, in that Ed is a demonologist, Lorraine is a psychic, and the two travel the country helping desperate families rid themselves and their homes of demonic presences. In the Conjuring universe, there's plenty of evil to go around, but the two big bads the Warrens find themselves facing on multiple occasions are Valak and Malthus, which take the forms of the nun and Annabelle the doll. Valak's backstory plays out in The Nun films, which are mostly set in the early to mid-50s. In the first one, the Abbey of St. Carter in Romania is tormented by a dark presence. It seemingly forced the convent's most devoted nun to hang herself. The Vatican launches an investigation, sending a failed exorcist, Father Burke, and a psychic nun in training, Sister Irene, to figure out what exactly is going on. They hook up with a local, Maurice, aka Frenchie, and start digging into the history of the Abbey. Between the various jump scares and creepy shadow appearances, we learn that Valak was originally summoned by the Duke of St. Carter during the Dark Ages. He was obsessed with the occult, as one who summons demons would be. Luckily, he was stopped by the church with the help of a relic containing the blood of Christ, and Valak was sealed underground until World War II, when bombing broke the seal and Valak was able to escape. But it needs to possess a living human to truly get out, and the nuns have been keeping it at bay through perpetual prayer. Except all those nuns at the Abbey, they're long dead. The one who hanged herself had been the last there, and she did it to keep Valak from possessing her. Their ghosts did pass along some valuable information to Irene though, and she has a revelation.
My visions. I now know they are a miracle of God.
Armed with their newly taken vows, Irene, Burke, and Frenchie are able to reseal Valak with the blood relic. Sort of. Turns out that when Frenchie swooped in for a last-minute rescue of Irene, he actually got by Valak, providing that living human the demon so desperately needs to leave the Abbey. We catch up with him 4 years later in France, where he's working as a handyman at a monastery-turned-winery-turned-boarding school, and things are weird. Frenchie seems to be doing alright, if you don't count all the times he gets stuck in Valak-possessed trances. People around him notice, but don't really think anything of it, except for Irene, who's had a vision.
Save me, sister.
Priests and nuns have been dying across Europe, and the church is convinced it's Valak. They want Irene to track the demon down and figure out what it wants. Among various other jump scares and even more creepy shadow appearances, plus a bonus goat demon, Irene discovers that Valak is actually a fallen angel who's on the hunt for the eyes of Saint Lucy, a 4th century martyr who survived being lit on fire. Her eyes were removed when she was killed, and her family has been keeping them hidden for centuries. If Valak gets a hold of them, it will regain its angelic strength. You can see where this is going. But Irene also discovers she's a descendant of Saint Lucy, which means that 1. She can also survive being lit on fire, and 2. She can turn the barrels of abandoned wine in the monastery-turned-winery-turned-boarding school into the blood of Christ with a blessing. Again, Valak is defeated, and all seems well with Frenchie once more. Sort of. We'll get back to him. As Annabelle tells us, dolls are used in religious rites as conduits for good and evil. Obviously, in the Conjuring universe, dolls are going to be used for evil. And in Annabelle creation, we learn that demons are especially fond of creepy porcelain. That story begins in the early 40s with the Mullins family. Samuel is a doll maker, and he and Esther have a daughter. Annabelle, who, in the kind of freak accident that sets many a horror film into motion, is hit by a car and dies. 12 years later, Samuel opens the home up to a group of orphaned girls. Esther is bedridden and refuses to show her face, and Annabelle's room is
locked. And it stays that way too.
Which of course means that's where the Warrens' other adversary, Malthus, has decided to hole up, attached to one of Samuel's dolls. It singles out the weakest of the girls, Janice, who has trouble walking because of polio and can't make friends easily, because girls are mean. Janice finds a way into Annabelle's room and finds the Annabelle doll in a closet lined with Bible pages, which really should be a clue to leave, but it isn't. Malthus does what any demon would do and causes general spooky mayhem. with the end goal of hitching a ride out of town in Janice's body.
What do you need?
Your soul!
After a successful possession, a Valak cameo, and one of the most messed up games of hide-and-seek in movie history, we finally get the lowdown from Esther. She and Samuel had tried to contact their dead daughter through supernatural means. They got a demon instead, who asked for permission to enter the doll. By the time they realized it's screwed up, the only thing they could do was lock the doll in a closet surrounded by the Word of God, and then invite a bunch of children to live with them. A couple of deaths and a brief battle with a scarecrow later, and a now-possessed Janice manages to escape the house, leaving behind the doll and getting herself adopted by a nice couple, Pete and Sharon Higgins. 12 years later, the Higgins live next door to expecting couple Mia and John Form. Mia collects dolls, and John, ever the loving husband, has managed to track down the one she's been looking for, Annabelle. Janice, now going by Annabelle, has run away with a group of hippies who are actually part of a demonic cult, the Disciples of the Ram. In true cult fashion, just after the Manson family murders hit the news, Janice and her cult boyfriend break into the Higgins house and kill her parents. They then make their way into the Forms' home, where Janice has a reunion of sorts.
I like your dolls.
The police arrive just in time to save Mia and John, but not before Janice has a chance to kill herself and release Malthus back to its favorite vessel. From there, it does what it does best: torment Mia with glitchy appliances, ominous kids' drawings, shadow chases, and visions of Janice, with the help of an eccentric bookstore owner and their local priest who gives a shout-out to the Warrens.
At the very least, I've heard of a married couple that the church has worked with in the past to deal with this type of thing.
The Forms learn that the demon wants a soul, obviously, but one that's been given willingly. Mia almost gives it hers, but is saved last minute by her new reading buddy. The Annabelle doll disappears, and 6 months later winds up in the hands of a woman looking for a gift for her nursed daughter. Which brings us to... The Conjuring opens with a visit to Debbie and Camilla, the nurses currently in possession of the Annabelle doll from the Warrens.
A 7-year-old girl named Annabelle Higgins had died in this apartment. She was lonely and took a liking to my doll.
The girls admit to giving Annabelle permission to enter the doll, which, as we already know, is a terrible idea and leads to bad things happening in their apartment. The Warrens recognize the demonic presence and take the doll, lock it up in their basement of cursed objects, and have it blessed by a priest once a month. Meanwhile, Lorraine is struggling to get past a traumatic exorcism, Frenchie's. During a university lecture, the Warrens play video of the exorcism they assisted on to finally rid Frenchie of Valak, but they deliver some bad news. Frenchie wound up shooting at his wife before turning the gun on himself. Before he did though, Lorraine got a vision of Ed's death at the hands of Valak, which had her spending the next 8 days locked in her bedroom.
It took a real big piece.
It's at that lecture that the Warrens are introduced to Carolyn Perrin. Her family has just moved into an old farmhouse, and they're experiencing some spooky happenings. Knocks in the night, dying dogs, demonic witches on wardrobes, the usual. They agree to investigate, in spite of Ed's reluctance to get Lorraine involved in another potentially dangerous case.
There's definitely something here.
Lorraine senses an evil presence almost immediately, and it's during the Conjuring that we really see the extent of her powers. She's able to actually see the spirits who haunt the parents' property, including the one causing all the trouble, Bathsheba, the wife of the home's original owner and a descendant of Marytown Esty, one of the women killed during the Salem witch trials. Bathsheba sacrificed a 7-day-old infant, professed her love to Satan, and hanged herself on the property. She also has a big problem with anyone who tries to take her land, so she spent the last century possessing and killing the people who move onto it, and her current target is Carolyn Perrin. The Warrens set up an overnight investigation with some friends, find some ghosts, and realize that Carolyn has been possessed. But when they ask for exorcism help from the church, they're told they need to get permission from the Vatican, since their parents aren't parishioners. Things go from bad to worse, of course, so Ed and Lorraine decide they have to do it themselves.
Let's finish this together.
In the middle of all this, Bathsheba decides she's had enough of the Warrens' psychic interference and takes it upon herself to attack their daughter, Judy, with an assist from the Annabelle doll. In the end, Lorraine overcomes her Frenchie trauma, the Warrens come together and successfully complete their exorcism, and the parents presumably go on to live a normal, happy life. Annabelle Comes Home is a mostly standalone haunted house flick that serves as an introduction to potential future Conjuring universe spin-offs. But it does give some extra insight into the Annabelle doll, as well as Lorraine's psychic gift. We again begin with the Warrens meeting Debbie and Camilla in order to pick up the doll. But this time we get to see the drive home, and it gets a little deathy.
I like your doll.
Lorraine realizes that the doll isn't just a conduit for demonic activity, it's a beacon for other spirits, and it wants the Warrens dead. Coming up on Judy's birthday, the Warrens' daughter is dealing with her own issues. Not only are kids at school avoiding her because of her parents, but she's coming into psychic powers of her own. Ed and Lorraine have to go for a night to look into a potential case, leaving high schooler Mary Ellen in charge of the house. But Mary Ellen's best friend and horror movie cliché Daniela has other plans. She's sad about the death of her father, and thinks breaking into the Warrens' occult museum and letting Annabelle out will allow her to see him again. She's right, but not in the way she was hoping.
You did this to me!
The rest of the night is spent trying to avoid death at the hands of all of the Warrens' cursed objects, which have come to life, thanks to Malthus and Daniela.
What else did you touch?
Amid the creeping spirits, occasional jump scares, a possession, an exorcism by way of video, and a brief appearance by Annabelle Mullins, the movie sets up some fun potential antagonists. In the end, Judy and her psychic ability are able to counteract Daniela's overwhelming stupidity, and the three girls get Annabelle back in her case. When Ed and Lorraine return, all is well, including Judy's social life. The kids at school do a 180 and show up to celebrate her birthday. Before going any further with the Warrens, it should be noted that yes, The Curse of La Llorona is a movie that exists. Is it part of the Conjuring universe? Debatable. The only thing tying it to anything else is Father Perez. He's the priest who told the Forms about the Warrens and Annabelle. He does that here too.
The church works with people who specialize in situations like this.
Okay.
Otherwise, it's pretty unimportant in the grand Warren scheme of things. What is important, though, is Amityville, which happens just a few years later. It's arguably the most famous of the Warrens' cases. In 1976, Ed and Lorraine traveled to Amityville, New York, to look into demonic activity in a home that had been recently purchased by the Lutz family. While the Conjuring universe doesn't devote an entire film to their investigation, who really needs another Amityville Horror after all, The Conjuring 2 does spend its opening sequence there, and it's in Amityville that Lorraine encounters Valak for a second time. The experience leaves her shaken, understandably, and sets up one hell of a confrontation. A year after Amityville in Enfield, London, Janet Hodgson has done the one thing you would never do in a horror movie and used a spirit board to try and communicate with ghosts. That opens her up to being possessed by the angry spirit of Bill, an old man who died in the leather chair the Hodgsons currently keep in the corner of their living room. Bill doesn't want the family there, which he reminds them of often.
My house!
And he's using Janet to scare them away, in between watching Queen Elizabeth on TV. Things get worse, and after a couple of constables see stuff moving in the house, the Hodgsons are asked to share their story on TV, where Janet's supposed possession is caught on camera. But this opens them up to public scrutiny. It's something the Warrens can relate to. Ever since Amityville, skeptics have been questioning their investigations.
Listen, Ed Warren's never seen a house that he didn't think was haunted.
At this point, the church steps in, and they contact the Warrens for help. Lorraine is reluctant to get involved. Her continued Valak premonitions, plus Ed's new hobby of making evil nun art, have her scared for Ed's life. But Ed convinces her to go to England under the pretense that they'll just observe the family without getting directly involved. Ed and Lorraine decide to stay with the Hodgsons while they work on figuring out exactly what's happening. In spite of continued supernatural incidents, Lorraine can't actually feel a presence in the house. So when evidence is presented that Janet staged one of the incidents, the Warrens decide to head home. That's when Ed realizes that Bill isn't actually as evil as everyone thinks.
Oh, please, it won't let me go!
Lorraine's psychic block on the house is broken, and she learns from Bill that the real force haunting the Hodgsons is the demon we know is Valak. The Warrens rush back to the house, armed with their new knowledge, along with a clue that the key to defeating the demon is in its name. Ed runs inside, but he and Lorraine are separated, and Ed is partially blinded by a burst steam pipe. He soldiers on though, and after a brief encounter with the failed spin-off character, the Crooked Man, finds a Valak-possessed Janet about to jump out the window. Meanwhile, Lorraine realizes that the demon had given her its name during one of her earlier visions. Valak had actually been dropping hints all over the place, but that's beside the point.
Your name gives me dominion over you, demon. And I do know your name.
Lorraine is able to defeat it, finally, and save Ed from certain death. The Hodgsons are saved, and the Warrens return home with a new haunted artifact. The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It opens in 1981, with the Warrens overseeing the exorcism of 8-year-old David Glatzel, who lives with his older sister Debbie and her boyfriend, Arnie Johnson. Things don't exactly go well for anyone involved. Arnie demands the demon take him instead, and Ed has a heart attack.
I'll stop your heart, old man!
Lorraine's also hit with a vision of a ritualistic practice being performed, which distracts her from Arnie's possession. Because Ed was the only one who saw it happen, everyone else thinks David's exorcism was a success. It was, and it wasn't. David's free, but now Arnie is being hit with visions of his own, a woman following him around, making him do things like almost drop a running chainsaw onto his co-workers. When he imagines being attacked by a demon, Arnie inadvertently kills his landlord. He's taken into custody and charged with murder. But the Warrens know it wasn't his fault. They meet with Arnie's attorney and argue that his defense should be based on possession. The lawyer thinks the idea is a bad one, until Ed invites her to come over one evening to meet Annabelle. We can assume that meeting went well because…
Your Honor, my client pleads not guilty by reason of demonic possession.
From there, the Warrens are tasked with proving Arnie's possession, but something isn't adding up. Arnie's able to recite Bible passages and touch religious objects, which he shouldn't be able to do if he was under the influence of a demon. The Warrens decide to search the Glatzel house, where David was first possessed. It's there they find a witch's totem, and their priest points them in the direction of an expert, Father Kastner, a former priest who helped expose the disciples of the Ram cult a decade earlier. Kastner has a similar obsession with the occult as the Warrens do. He too keeps a room of cursed objects. Lorraine doesn't seem to get the irony.
You should burn all this.
Kastner tells the Warrens the totem was made by a Satanist, and their main goal is just to create chaos. Over in Danvers, the Warrens are put in touch with a detective investigating the stabbing death of Katie Lincoln. Her friend, Jessica Strong, is still missing, but a similar totem was found in her home. Lorraine uses her psychic powers to find Jessica's body and solve the case, and the Warrens realize that Arnie is part of a larger curse, which can be broken if they destroy the Satanist altar. There's only one problem.
How are you doing this? God has shown you to me.
Lorraine has made a direct connection with the Satanist, and now Ed is a target. He'd round out the demonic ritual, which is centered on 3 separate attacks against the child, the lover, and the man of God. They represent purity, love, and faith. Once completed, the demon returns to hell with a soul, and the Satanist gets power. In the middle of trying to keep both Arnie and Ed from succumbing to the curse, and dealing with one very angry corpse, the Warrens make another visit to Kastner, and he admits to having fathered a daughter against his priestly vows. She became obsessed with his demonic research, and decided to become a Satanist.
We must be careful how our obsessions are passed to our children.
Thanks to this new knowledge, Ed and Lorraine are able to find and destroy her altar. The demon gets its soul in the Satanist, and Arnie walks away with a manslaughter charge and 5 years in prison. We also get some sweet Warren backstory, because the power of love and all that. So, where does that leave us for The Conjuring Last Rites? Billed as the Warrens' last case, the film takes place 5 years after The Devil Made Me Do It, and focuses on the Smurl family of West Pittston, Pennsylvania. Jack and Janet Smurl, like all of the other Conjuring families, were very real people. They contacted the Warrens after years of having dealt with paranormal activity in their home. It started with the usual: tools missing, electrical issues that had nothing to do with electricity, the smell of rotting flesh. But it got worse. Family members were thrown downstairs, pets were thrown against walls, and a succubus showed up. Things were weird. The Smurls did eventually reach out to the church, who sent several priests out to perform blessings, but the family insisted nothing helped, and the hauntings continued. By the time the Warrens got involved, the Smalls were desperate, and the neighbors were sick of all the attention. So how much of the family's real ordeal will we see unfold in theaters? You never know, but we can be sure of at least a few things. Lorraine will reach out to the spirits, and evil from their past will make a return. Ed will add another artifact to their collection, and the entire Warren family will have to conjure a little trust in each other in order to make it out alive.